and welcome to another episode of Comments, Controversies, and in the book world. I'm your host, Anna, and I will be taking you through an epic journey today. I have one previous episode of this, and I think it might wrap with these two episodes, but I wanted to make good on my promise to do a follow-up on the video that I made last month about TikTok, BookTok, everything in between with those bookish communities. So today I'm going to be taking you through the lands of problematic authors, habits that force me to read, other creators that I think are great. What is a self-help book? Why is it here? Do we love it? Do we hate it? Why? Intellectual books versus fun books? Everything like that. A little bit nervous still to voice my opinion so loudly, but hopefully these will be nuanced takes that don't feel like they're attacking, and we can all have a fruitful and happy conversation in the comments. So let's talk about the first question that I got, which I think is a great way to break the ice, and that is how was it? Should art be separated from the artist? Does a good book lose its value simply because the writer happens to be an ass? I love that phrasing, and I think it's the most to the point and perfect way to assess the damage of when somebody's art might be overlooked because of their personality. Wow, yeah, this is a very prevalent topic right now in the book world. I feel like everywhere we look, there's a new problematic author, there's classic authors. Posthumously, things are coming out about them. I haven't really gotten too much into the BookTok drama, though I know every week there's basically a new problematic author. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? I think this is a case-by-case scenario. I do believe that when it's just these very inconsequential problems, like somebody is just an ass, maybe there's somebody who comes forward and says, oh, this person was mean to me at a restaurant, or this person was a bad tipper, or they didn't smile with me, they didn't take a photo with me. That I think you can kind of dismiss. You don't know what sort of headspace the person's in. If it's just these slight missteps and people come out and apologize, I think that that's fine. You can decide if you want to pick up their book or not. But for these more monumental cases of actual crimes that are being committed in the eyes of an individual, it's tough. It's very tough, especially when they're such beloved authors for works that they had published previously. I do think that I'm just naturally, when I hear the severity of somebody's case, I'm probably going to naturally not pick up that author, or maybe read it by myself, form my own opinion about it. Definitely think it's case by case. Ultimately, I think it's up to you whether or not you want to read it, but there are a ton of authors and people. If you dig deep enough into any person, you're going to be able to find something that you don't like about them. Hell, I mean, you can probably find something about me that you don't like. You know, I might come off as pretentious to people, or insufferable, or too quirky, too silly, and maybe that's a means to just decide to dislike me, criticize my character, see the way that I assess things. So again, I think with actual illegal activity, that's much more of a severe case, obviously. That kind of goes without saying. But of course, a lot of these authors are forgiven. My favorite instance is William S. Burroughs? Can't even say his name right. Burroughs, who quite literally killed his wife. And got away with it. Found a loophole and got away with it. And he is still celebrated and cherished to this day. Yes, they say it was an accident. Yes, he didn't mean to shoot her, but he killed his wife. Just do your own research. Make sure that you are taking part in something that you believe in, and it's hard when a part of the author is always going to be in their work, whether it's fiction, science fiction, nonfiction. A part of the author is always going to be there, so it just comes down to you, what you feel like associating yourself with, what you think is morally correct, and just pick based on what you align with and what you don't want to align with. There's always going to be assholes. Really roundabout answer, and I hope it works, but I don't want to lead people astray, but I also am a fervent believer that people should form their own opinion on things. Next string of questions are going to just be all about book-related things, topics. Number one being, do audiobooks count? Do rereads count? Intellectual versus fun books? And then we're going to get into self-help. So let's talk about audiobooks. This is a big conversation to be had. I personally have listened to audiobooks my entire life. Some of my favorite listening and book experiences have been with audiobooks. Some of the most formative memories of enjoying words have been through audiobooks on family trips. I've always loved audiobooks, and sometimes I even remember those stories more. I will say I've had much of a stronger relationship with the nonfiction audiobooks as opposed to fiction. I do find I get a little bit lost in fiction audiobooks, but I understand that a lot of people use that. For me, nonfiction audiobooks are fantastic. I love them. I learned so much through them, and I feel like I am engaged in a way that I might not be with fact-based writing on the page. Basically, just use audiobooks for nonfiction now. I found that works best for me, but people have jobs. Sometimes just listening to an audiobook is the best way for them to be able to read a book. So if it's taking them to new lands, new authors, new stories, I'm all about it. I know people are gonna be upset about that in the comments. I totally understand, but I think it's a great resource to getting into books. And I know a lot of people that do it and love it, so I'm all for it. I don't care. Do rereads count? Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? I reread all the time, and I think I have better experiences than first reading it. I think I'm less impressionable to outside criticism or praise, and I think I form much more of a stronger singular opinion, and I love rereads. I count them towards everything. I love a reread. And I think it just makes the experience a little bit better. I'll do it any day of the week if the book is good. Intellectual versus fun books. Okay, I'm gonna say something. One of the hardest books for me to read this year, and it's not a bad book, it just did not work for me, was this book called Femme by Magda Karnecki. This was so stream of consciousness. This was a little too hyper intellectual for me, and I'm not that intelligent, maybe emotionally, to understand this book. I got so depressed because I just felt like I could not break through it, and ultimately I felt like I was not achieving anything out of it, which makes me a little bit more sad than even trying to read it and failing, because I truly get something out of every single book that I read. Even if it's a bad book, I am learning something about what I like, what I dislike. And with this book, I just felt so upset because I just could not understand why this book was happening. It was just too avant-garde almost. And I love that. I mean, look at what I'm wearing. Come on now. Okay, I love that. I love those worlds. I love those writers, but this stream of consciousness was just too heavy and heady for me, and I just could not understand it. So I'm a huge advocate of switching it up. I find that you do have to work up an appetite and a momentum to get to certain books, certain criteria, certain authors. And I think a lot of the time, the best way to get there is just to read fun books. I've now picked books that I solely know that I'm gonna have a fun time with, and they end up being some of my favorite books of the year. Maybe literary circles aren't gonna praise me, appreciate me, but that's fine. I'm reading a substantial amount of books that are classics, intellectual, and I don't feel like I have to fight to say that I'm a reader anymore if I'm not reading all the right books. Just have fun with your reading, and the right books will eventually come when you want to read them and when it feels correct. And now we'll get into self-help, and I have a great comment about self-help, and it says, I think it's good to read some, but after reading my fair share, I've realized it's just repackaged information after you read the first few. Edit. And why is it called self-help if you're reading somebody else's take on what you should do with your life? Self-help books. How do I feel about self-help books? I do think that they can be beneficial for some people. I think it's a great starting point for some people, but for me, the most effective self-help, I can't even talk today, but for me, the most effective self-help sort of books have been nonfiction, or even fiction for that matter, that emotionally change me in a direction that feels motivating. I can say off the top of my head, the nonfiction book that is literally the most motivating and feels like a self-help is what I talk about when I talk about Running by Haruki Murakami. In so many ways, people might see it as cheesy. I don't care. I love that book. It's so motivating every single time I read it. Truly, I love that. And that might even be considered self-help. I think if it helps you, sure. To me, I think if it's the only thing that you're reading, you're probably just narrowing your scope down more and more and more. And I do agree, it's the same regurgitation of the same things over and over and over again. I feel like I'm a victim of that sometimes, just repeating the same mantras over and over and over again. And I get bored of myself. So if I get bored of that, I can't even imagine what the consumer actively consuming self-help books all the time feels very redundant and just a cycle of just reading as opposed to actually executing and finding what works for you. Least favorite books or genres? I think like stream of consciousness, if it's not done well, is really bad, really bad. I mean, I'm not like a huge romance reader. I do love elements of romance in books. I like affairs. I like people falling in love. I like that. When it happens, I'm elated. Least favorite books, like I said before, and this is probably a boring and answer that you don't want to hear. I wish it was juicier. I make a least favorite books of the year video every year over my Patreon just because I'm way too sensitive to put it on online. I used to do it, but now I don't want to do that. I always get something out of books, truly. I think it's just more of the sentiments in a book that irk me. If somebody I can sniff is trying to make themselves seem so much elevated than the audience or the particular group of people that they're talking about in a book, I don't like that. And that is like, get out of here. You're annoying. Stop. Now I'm gonna get into habits. I don't have the exact question, but I know that somebody asked, like, how do you find your books? I would say I used to be heavily reliant on people on the internet, but truly I don't watch so much BookTube activity now just because I am on it myself. But I will say I'm gonna give a shout out to some people that I think are very similar to me. I think if you explore some of these creators, you'll probably also be able to find similar creators. Nathan's Nook, Benjamin Journal, Valentina, CJ Reads, Bibliosophie, Sean McComb, Alana Estelle, Savage Reads, Renee Morris, Seesaw, Pato, Bar in the Bookcase, and Frankie's Shelf. Those are some great creators who I think are very on par with what I'm doing, probably similar personalities as well, and I think you would enjoy if you're looking for more inspiration in the book world. I also, honestly, I just go into bookshops. I do judge a book by its cover. It's horrible. I know it. I'm not better than anybody, okay? I do judge a book by its cover, and now that I've gotten more into the book world, I recognize authors that I can always rely on and I know are going to be good reading experiences, so I'm comfortable in those choices now. Nonfiction is really easy for me to just pick up randomly. I feel like with fiction, maybe I rely a little bit more on what I already know, or having heard somebody recommend a book, I rely a little bit more on that now. But with nonfiction, I'm really exploratory and I will literally pick up something on the side of the road and read it if it sounds good. And then somebody also said, I recently saw people talk about their tower of shame, aka books that they haven't read but feel like they should have. I would love to know your thoughts on that concept of shame, and also if you have any tips on mindful reading without constantly thinking of your next read. And then somebody also asked about building momentum in reading, so I'll pair those two questions together. The Tower of Shame. Shamefully, books that I haven't gotten to, that I hope to get to. Definitely more classics. I don't feel like I'm so well versed in all the classics. I would also say I haven't read a lot of international classics as much as I'd like to, and I think that there is a great conversation to be had with those because I think it explores history, it explores culturally the significance of a lot of things. Even some American classics I do feel left behind on, and I would like to explore more of those. So it's not shame. I don't feel bad about not reading these books. I do feel like I will probably eventually get to them. It's just much more of carving out time to do it. I'm pleasantly surprised when I am able to do that. I didn't think I was going to get to Madame Bovary again. We read that for my book club this year. I never thought I was going to read East of Eden, and that is such an easy classic with such profound emotional intelligence in it that you can't help but adore every single page. We're reading The Grapes of Wrath in my book club. I do find that book clubs help me read the books much more attentively. So if you want to tackle those shame books, join a book club that is talking about it, and I think you will probably get a lot out of it as well. But I don't really feel shame. I mean, yeah, sure, I feel some shame. I feel more shameful when I'm at a party and people ask me what I'm reading, and I know that I'm like reading something stupid or fun, and then I say that, and they look at me, oh, I don't think I'm interested in your channel, you know? But whatever, I gotta be truthful, you know? I have to be truthful. Mindful reading without thinking about the next book and how to build momentum in reading. Okay, so I do suffer with making sure that I'm being attentive to the actual book that I'm reading as opposed to thinking about my next read. Yeah, that's tough. It really is, especially when I know I got a good lineup. I got a thick lineup happening. For me, the biggest way to dissuade this is just to not buy a book. That helps. I know if I have a fresh book that I've just purchased, I'm going to want to read that immediately, and I almost always check out of the current book that I'm reading or just waiting to buy it till after you're finished. Also, if you're so checked out of your current book that you're reading, I feel like just put it down, pick up the book you actually want to read, finish this, and then go back to the prior book that you were reading. That does help me so much. It helps me so much. And I end up potentially loving the first book that I started with much more than I would have if I just dragged my knuckles through it. Building momentum in reading, like I said before, just start with fun books, authors that you know you like, activities and things profiled. That's the worst way to say it. Things that you know you're going to enjoy. I think that's a great way to get started, and then just keep on picking those things up, and then eventually you will expand into larger fields, stronger fields, much easier than just immediately diving into a book that's complicated and difficult. You will eventually get to where you want to go to, but it's like when you want to go on a run, you have to start running. You have to start running, and eventually you'll start to run faster, and you will get to that speed. The moment you stopped reading books you're supposed to read and just picked stuff you wanted to read, I guess this goes into Mountain of Shame books as well. I would say the best thing that I've focused on this year is just really focusing on reading what I already have. If I've chosen those books, they meant something to me at that point, and I want to just read those, even if they're backlist books, even if they were released 3 years ago, if they were released last year, if they were released in 1800. I think there was a reason that I chose these, and I wanted to read them. What am I supposed to read? You know, what are we supposed to do now? What is that concept of supposed to do something? I'm supposed to have straight hair, I'm sure. You know, in a world of supposed to's, I'm not supposed to be wearing shoulder pads right now, but I am, bitch. And I'm sweating. And I'm not supposed to be sweating, but here I am. Just throw it all out. Do what you want. You're going to end up loving it so much more. Do blurbs matter at all? Has anyone bought a book based on a blurb? Why are they on the back instead of the summary? I'm assuming that this has to do with other authors blurbing a book. Yeah, those really don't do too much for me. I also once read a comment on a video somewhere, and the person said that they worked for a publishing house and they were actually in charge of writing the blurbs under the disguise of the author, if that is correct. Something like that. I knew it was kind of a controversial comment, or maybe they had worked with a particular author and they actually wrote the blurb. Something along those lines of it actually might be a little bit fictional, the blurb on the back. I think that's a hype thing. I think if people are ardent followers of a particular author, then that might have something to do with increasing the hype and the fame around a book that they endorse. It could be all down to they're under the same publishing house, they're under the same agency. It's all kind of a business practice of pushing it. They could just be in the same group of friends. Of course you want to help out your friend. It doesn't really do anything for me. I think it's fun to see the authors that are blurbed, so maybe you know it's in the same vein, but it doesn't really do too much for me. Have you ever picked a book based on the accolades it receives? If so, which accolades do you usually lean towards, like the Booker Prize, National Book Award, Pulitzer? I don't pick a book based on that. I think a little bit more interested if it has a Booker or a Pulitzer. I do know that that is not indicative of an amazing book, but I think that I'm probably going to know that it's a good story. I have a really great track record with any Booker Prize winners, any Pulitzer Prize winners. They might not be my favorite books of all time, but I always enjoy the story that it's brought forth. It's a pleasant surprise when I pick up something and it says, oh, it has the Booker, it's won the Booker, or it's won the Pulitzer, or it's won the National Book Award. That's so nice, it's so cool, it's so fun. Okay. And now the last question I've had to give a lot of thought about, similar to the how do we separate art from the artist. feminine presence in the book spaces. And this question says, do you believe the generally feminine presence within the online book community is the reason that said community is currently under attack by other types of influencers, or do you believe it has more to do with what they are considering a lack of depth in the content that creators are giving time to? I think this goes back to the BookTok conversation. I think it's probably much more apparent on BookTok. Maybe the vapid idea that these book influencers have nothing to contribute. I can't speak much on that because I'm not on that, and I've given a whole rundown of my TikTok ideas. I'm going to talk about what I see in my world. I'm going to use the example of Dua Lipa, okay? Ooh, I'm about to fall off. There was that huge viral essay put out by Below the Frey, and it was a great viral essay about Dua Lipa and how she is running one of the most successful book clubs and asking these really great questions. She's bringing comfort to the authors. She's showing how in depth that she's reading and really highlighting books that aren't necessarily, super mainstream. And what I think is interesting about that is that we're also shocked about that, right? And why were we shocked? We were shocked because she was this woman who dresses up and she wears these glamorous clothes. She's a beautiful woman and she's a pop star. And I think we so often label people something in our minds already before we even get the chance to see them open their mouths or defend themselves or talk about things that they're actually passionate about. And I think that is much more of what irks me. There are times when if I wear a silly outfit, if I put on makeup, if I do my hair, I feel like I'm being too glamorous and I won't be taken seriously. But then I have to think, you know what, it's authentically me, and at the end of the day, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to hopefully show my actual passion for things, and that will come through much more than the facade that people might project onto me. If you're gonna just attack somebody for who they are without listening to them, giving them a chance, then don't do it. Don't do it. You're gonna get nothing out of it. Really, truly, nothing out of it. My live studio audience, you've been so wonderful. Hopefully this has been enjoyable. Hopefully you've had some questions answered. I don't know how often I'll be doing videos like this, but I did not want to leave the remaining questions unanswered. I do think that there was a lot of value in those questions, and I am sure that there's going to be even more controversies, comments, and uh-uhs in the book world coming forward. So we'll see. We'll see when I do this in front of a live studio audience again. Anyway, you guys are wonderful. You're fabulous. Please add your contributions to the comments. I would love to read them. I will see you in the next one.